As you get ready to start your research for your short story research paper, you should go to the Wallace State homepage to access the library. Click on Library up there, then go to Alabama Virtual Library. Then you will go to All Resources. I find if I click the specific college and university or adult resources, some of the databases don't show up that really are college level. And we're looking for Gale starting with G, and notice they're in alphabetical order, so go down to Gale. So when you see the G's, that one says Gale eBooks, but we want the bottom gray tab thing to say Gale. Now here's a whole section of Gale things. We don't want elementary or middle school level things to read. What would be best is one of these Gale literature things. I would suggest Gale literature criticism. This is a newer one. I'm still exploring it, but it has proved fruitful so far. So let's go with that. In the search bar, you can type in the title of the short story that you want to research. And even before you have an idea about what you want to propose as a thesis or a working thesis or any kind of direction you really want to go with the research, I suggest that you just read more. Click Read More and find several articles until you find something that speaks to you about a topic that you feel like you can really explore using research. You need 2 secondary sources. That means 2 articles from Alabama Virtual Library and 1 primary source, which is the book or short story, that you are writing about, the short story. So I have an introduction to Cathedral. Now you'll notice Cathedral is a collection, a short story collection. So it's the title of the collection and it's the title of the a short story within that collection. So when they're talking about Cathedral, the collection, it's in italics because books are italicized. The title of the short story is going to be in quotation marks. So this section, because this is italics, I'm assuming it is talking about a whole lot of different stories like Feathers and The Compartment and lots of different stories. So here's a little snippet about Cathedral. So I can get some idea from this, but I need to be careful about citing something that really is talking about a collection versus the single short story, which should be your focus if you are researching Cathedral or whatever short story you are researching. But that's not to say that you couldn't get some information about the author's writing style or typical themes explored by the writer. You can use something that is written about another short story the writer has authored and apply it to your analysis of the short story that you've been assigned for class. I've got a little pop-up that I don't want, but it's very nice that they will offer me some help there. So know that you can explore that as well. Looking over here under themes, I see some things that are interesting, and I haven't really clicked on anything other than that masculinity in the short story is interesting, given that there are 2 men that are the focus of Cathedral in the short story, and there's 1 woman, and it's almost a territorial thing, so you could explore that. And this will give you some information on general, a broad overview of what the current discussion is through published scholars that are talking about the role of masculinity and how masculinity is represented in short stories. So you could get information that's from a more general discussion about literature and use it for some source material for investigating more deeply the short story you are looking at. So that could be useful. Going back though to where we saw Raymond Carver, I'm just clicking the back button there. I recommend that under Explore, it's got criticisms, and you can click View All Related Articles. So I would kind of steer away from just general reviews of the short story and look for some real topical investigations. Now, the reviews may have something you can use, but you really want to get into something more complex than just an overview of the work. In fact, anytime you quote something from a secondary source, it should be something that's pretty unique to that scholar's idea, that scholar's analysis of the story. And then you're going to engage with that scholar as if you're in a conversation with the person who wrote that article. And you can either agree with that person's idea, or you can quote the idea the person has and show why you disagree with it and use the primary source as your evidence for taking the opposite side of that argument. So maturity in Cathedral might be interesting. The main character, certainly in his territorialness, is a bit immature. And you could talk about maturity and masculinity. You could use both of those articles to create some interesting conversation for your essay, which is what your essay is. You're engaging with other scholars about a work of literature, and you're making your own argument that may be supported by the scholars that you are in conversation with, or you may be taking another side. So maturity might be interesting to work in a conversation about masculinity as well, because you almost have men that represent two sides of maturity as well. Insularity and self-enlargement might also work with topics like maturity. That might be interesting. I haven't really explored that fully. This is interesting, the possibility of resurrection revision in Carver's Feathers and Cathedral. Our topic when we're discussing Cathedral is about sight and insight, so revision, especially in the context of resurrection with the cathedral imagery and all that represents. That might be very interesting to explore. So if you find an article like that, of course, certainly see if it interests you at all. You can email it to yourself, download it, print it. Definitely click the Cite button so you can get the work cited. You're going to be using ML edition, so you could just copy and paste that and use it for your work cited and have very little work to do, which is always nice. Make sure some of you are using APA for some reason. I'm not sure why that is. So don't use APA in an English class. Save that for classes where that's required. You will have many different formats that you're required to use in your academic career. So make sure that you pay attention to what format you're using. So some of the articles will appear more like they would in the actual journal article, and sometimes they look more like just a standard Word document or PDF. So I think you could access that here as well. You can look at related subjects even. Here's more Raymond Carver. You can listen to it. So you have a whole lot of things to explore. So here's some more Raymond Carver related articles, which is really super cool. So just, you can go down the rabbit hole with this. This is a short story that is by Raymond Carver. So here's another article on, actually it's a review on that short story. And it may not really relate to Cathedral, but here's one with Cathedral in the description of the title, so that might be good as well. And it says critical essay instead of review, so that's a good thing to look for when you are trying to find sources for your research paper, or if you just want to better understand the works we are studying in class to do even better on the quizzes and discussion posts. So that hopefully will get you started with your research. Let me know if you have any questions.